During a peaceful afternoon in their cozy home, Maria and her teenage son Eric laugh while decorating a cake for his upcoming birthday. But just as they finish, the doorbell rings. When Maria opens the door, a stern-looking stranger stands there, holding a letter and saying, "You've kept the truth from him for too long." The letter bears Eric's birth father's name. "Hi there. I'm Goldie, and welcome to Goldie's Love Stories." Maria stood in her cozy kitchen, a warm aroma of vanilla and chocolate wafting through the air as she and her teenage son Eric decorated the cake for his upcoming birthday. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the happy chaos of sprinkles, icing, and laughter that filled the room. It was a Saturday afternoon, and as the days grew longer, Maria felt an unmistakable sense of joy. Eric was turning 15, a milestone that marked not just another year but a transition into young adulthood. "Mom, you have to make sure I get the frosting just right," Eric teased, his brown eyes sparkling with excitement as he grabbed a tube of blue icing. He squeezed it with all his might, leaving a lopsided swirl on the top of the cake. Maria laughed, wiping a smear of icing from her cheek as she watched him. This was one of those perfect moments, one that she would remember long after the cake was eaten and the candles extinguished. "I think it's beautiful," she said, glancing at the cake adorned with a chaotic mix of colors, stars, and smiley faces. "You're a natural decorator, Eric." "Thanks, Mom." He beamed with pride, looking back at the cake with admiration. "I can't wait to show my friends. They're going to love it." Maria's heart swelled with pride as she watched him. Eric had always been her little artist, pouring his creativity into everything he did, whether it was painting, drawing, or even decorating cakes. She had raised him as a single mother after a difficult decision years ago, and while life had its challenges, moments like these made everything worthwhile. She had fought hard to create a stable and loving environment for him, and today was a testament to that. Just as they finished decorating the cake, the doorbell rang, interrupting their moment of joy. Maria exchanged a glance with Eric, who shrugged, curious about who could be visiting on a Saturday afternoon. She wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and made her way to the door, still feeling a lingering sense of happiness from their earlier activity. When she opened the door, the joy that had filled her home moments ago was quickly replaced by confusion. Standing before her was a stern-looking man in a tailored black suit, holding an envelope that looked worn and old. His face was serious, his dark hair slicked back, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made Maria instinctively take a step back. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly. "Are you Maria?" he asked, his tone formal and unyielding. "Yes, I am," she replied, a knot forming in her stomach. "Who are you?" He took a deep breath and seemed to weigh his words carefully. "I'm here to talk about your son Eric," he said, glancing past her into the house. At the mention of her son's name, a chill ran down Maria's spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "What about Eric?" she asked, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" "I'm a friend of Eric's biological father," he said, holding out the envelope. "You've kept the truth from him for too long." Maria felt her breath catch in her throat as she processed his words. For a moment, the world around her faded away, and all she could hear was the steady thump of her heartbeat in her ears. She had spent years carefully constructing a life for herself and Eric, shielding him from the painful truths of his past. The very idea that someone was standing at her door, confronting her about it, sent her mind into a whirl. "I think you should leave," Maria said firmly, trying to regain her composure. She instinctively stepped back to close the door, but the man raised his hand. "Please just let me explain," he urged, his voice softening slightly. "I understand this is shocking, but Eric deserves to know the truth about where he came from." "Who are you?" Maria repeated, desperation creeping into her voice. "What do you want from us?" "My name is Martin," he said, his expression softening a little as he noticed her distress. "I knew Eric's father, and I believe he has a right to know about his heritage." Maria's mind raced. Eric's father? She had made a choice long ago to keep that part of their lives a secret, thinking it would protect Eric from pain. The last thing she wanted was for him to be hurt by the truth. "I don't know what you think you know, but I don't want to discuss this," she said, a sense of urgency in her tone. "Please," Martin insisted, his eyes pleading. "This isn't just about you. It's about him. Eric deserves to know who his father is." I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it was important. Maria hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She thought of Eric, who was probably still in the kitchen, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing at the door. How could she bring this up with him? The idea of shattering his innocent excitement about his birthday filled her with dread. "Can we talk privately?" Martin asked, sensing her hesitation. "I don't know if I want to," Maria replied, her voice trembling. "This isn't something I can just discuss." "But you have to," he pressed gently. "The letter I have will change everything for Eric. I just want you to read it." With a heavy heart, Maria glanced back toward the kitchen, where Eric's laughter echoed faintly. She was torn between her protective instincts and the undeniable reality that this stranger might hold vital information about Eric's life, a truth she had kept hidden for far too long. "Fine," Maria relented, her voice barely above a whisper. But only for a moment. She stepped aside, allowing Martin to enter, and closed the door behind him, sealing off the warmth and joy of their celebration. As they moved to the living room, a suffocating silence enveloped them. Maria could feel her hands trembling as she gestured for Martin to sit. "Just tell me what this is about," she said, her heart heavy with anxiety. "Eric's father, David. He loved you, but circumstances led him to make choices that he regretted. He never wanted to be absent from Eric's life. The truth is complicated, but it's time Eric knew." Maria's mind spun as she processed his words. Memories flooded back, of laughter, love, and the painful decisions she had made. She felt her heart break a little more with each passing moment. The thought of Eric discovering this truth was overwhelming, and she feared how it might change their lives forever. Just then, she heard Eric's footsteps approaching the living room, and her heart raced. She was standing on the precipice of a reality that could change everything, and she had no idea how to prepare her son for the impact of the truth. Martin looked solemn as he met Maria's eyes, the weight of his revelation hanging heavily in the air. Just then, the sound of Eric's footsteps grew louder, and Maria felt panic rise within her. She glanced toward the hallway, where her son would soon enter, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond the kitchen door. "Please," she whispered urgently to Martin, "we can't do this now. Eric is about to walk in, and I can't." "Maria," he interrupted softly but firmly, "he deserves to know. This is not just about you anymore. You've kept this secret for far too long." Before she could respond, the living room door swung open, and Eric stepped inside, a wide grin on his face. "Hey Mom. What's going on?" he asked, his youthful energy lighting up the room. He paused, noticing Martin seated in their living room, an unfamiliar figure in their familiar space. "Who's this?" "This is Martin," Maria stammered, her heart racing. "He came by to talk to us about something important." Eric looked between them, his expression shifting from confusion to curiosity. "Important? About what?" "Maybe we should take this slow," Martin suggested, keeping his tone measured and calm. "Eric, I know this is unexpected, but I have something to share with you, something about your father." The mention of Eric's father froze the air in the room. Eric's eyes widened, and Maria felt a knot tighten in her stomach. For years, she had shielded Eric from the painful truth about his father, David, who had walked out of their lives before he was even born. "What do you mean?" Eric asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and intrigue. "Eric," Martin said gently, "your father, David, he wanted you to know the truth about your heritage. He never stopped caring about you, even if you've never met him. And I'm here to help you understand that." Maria's heart raced as she tried to gauge Eric's reaction. This was not how she envisioned his 15th birthday celebration going. "Eric, honey, we need to talk about this," she said, trying to find the right words while the tension in the room thickened. "Mom, I don't understand," he replied, looking at her with wide eyes. I thought my dad was gone. I never even knew him." Tears prickled at the corners of Maria's eyes as she struggled to explain. "I wanted to protect you," she admitted, her voice quivering. "I thought it was best for you not to know about him, about what happened." "Why?" Eric shot back, frustration creeping into his tone. "Why wouldn't you tell me? I have a right to know." "Eric, I know this is hard," Martin interjected, attempting to bridge the widening gap between them. "But the truth is that David loved you. He was forced to make decisions that took him away from you and Maria. He would have been here if he could. Can we just take a step back for a moment? Maria said, her voice rising slightly. Eric, this is a lot to process. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was best. But what if he wanted to be part of my life? Eric pressed, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. What if he cared enough to be here? Martin nodded, sensing the emotional turmoil in the room. That's why I'm here. To help you understand. Your father made mistakes, but he always wanted a chance to be in your life. There's more to this story. Maria felt her heart break at the sight of Eric's pain, realizing that she had unintentionally built walls around him by keeping the truth hidden. She watched as Eric struggled with the revelations, the confusion etched on his face. Can we just talk about this later? She pleaded, desperate to keep the focus on the birthday celebration. You have your friends coming over soon. Let's not ruin this day. But Eric shook his head, determination shining in his eyes. No, Mom. This is about me. I deserve to know what's going on. I deserve to know the truth. The tension in the room thickened, and Maria felt her stomach churn. She had spent years trying to shield Eric from the hurt of abandonment, but now the floodgates were opening, and she was powerless to stop it. Eric, she began, searching for the right words. Your father had his reasons for leaving. I never wanted to speak poorly of him, but the truth is complicated. David had a life that didn't include us, and I didn't want you to feel that pain. Martin's expression remained empathetic, yet firm. You have to understand, Eric, that families are complicated. Just because David wasn't there doesn't mean he didn't care. Sometimes life forces us to make difficult choices. Eric's face twisted with anger and confusion. But why would you keep it a secret? He turned to Maria, his voice rising. You made me think I was alone, that I didn't have a dad who wanted me. I was trying to protect you. Maria shouted back, the emotions finally boiling over. I thought I was doing the right thing by keeping you safe from the pain of not knowing. I didn't want you to grow up feeling rejected. Maybe I would have preferred that over feeling like I don't even have a father. Eric yelled, tears brimming in his eyes. You think keeping me in the dark was better? Now I feel more lost than ever. Eric, please. Maria begged, her own eyes tearing up. I just wanted to give you a happy life, a stable life. I didn't want you to think less of your father. But the moment was irreversible. The weight of the truth had come crashing down, and there was no going back to the innocence they had shared just moments before. Eric's face was a mixture of hurt and betrayal, and Maria felt the rift grow deeper. Martin shifted in his seat, trying to mediate the rising tensions. Eric, I can help you find your father if you want to know more. It's not too late. But Eric shook his head. I don't know if I want to know anything, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Right now I just feel lost. With that, Eric turned and stormed out of the living room, leaving Maria standing frozen in the doorway, her heart heavy with regret. The birthday celebration she had envisioned had evaporated in an instant, replaced by the harsh reality of buried secrets. As the front door slammed behind him, Martin turned to Maria, concern etched on his face. You need to reach out to him, he said gently. He's hurting, and he needs you more than ever. I just wanted to protect him, Maria replied, her voice breaking. Now I've only hurt him. Martin placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. You can still mend this, Maria. It's going to take time, but the first step is to let him know you're there for him, no matter how hard it gets. But please, read the letter. It's important. Maria opened the letter with trembling hands. Her heart raced as she processed the revelation contained within the letter. David was dying, and the news struck her like a lightning bolt. The letter detailed his health concerns, serious hereditary conditions that could potentially affect Eric. This was the truth she had tried so hard to shield her son from, a reality that she could no longer ignore. Mom, are you okay? Eric's voice broke through her thoughts, concern etched across his teenage features. She looked up to see him standing in the living room. Maria forced a smile, trying to mask the tumult of emotions swirling inside her. Yes, sweetie, I just need a moment. As she took a deep breath, she glanced down at the letter again. David's words weighed heavily on her. He had described his diagnosis in detail, how the same hereditary conditions affected his family. Conditions that could impact Eric in ways she hadn't anticipated. She knew she had to tell Eric about his biological father, but how could she possibly convey the gravity of the situation? How could she explain the implications of this revelation without overwhelming him? Mom. Eric stepped closer, his brow furrowed with concern. What's in that letter? She hesitated, the weight of the truth heavy on her tongue. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. It's about your dad. Taking a deep breath, Maria made the decision to be honest. He's sick, Eric. He's dying. The words hung in the air, a harsh truth that shattered the fragile calm of their afternoon. Eric's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. What do you mean? What happened? David has some serious health concerns, and he wants you to know about them. He didn't want to keep it from you any longer. Maria's voice trembled as she spoke, and she could see the emotional turmoil reflected in Eric's eyes. Eric turned away, running a hand through his hair in frustration. This is so messed up, Mom. I can't believe you didn't think I should know. How can you just keep something like this from me? Maria stepped closer, reaching out to touch his shoulder, but Eric shrugged her off. Don't, he said sharply. Just don't. I need some space. She watched helplessly as he walked away, disappearing into his room and shutting the door behind him. Maria sank onto the couch, her heart heavy with guilt and sorrow. She had always intended to tell him one day, but she never imagined it would come at the cost of his father's life. A few moments later, Maria picked up the letter again, her eyes scanning the lines. David had asked for a chance to talk to Eric, to explain himself, and to share the weight of the health concerns that loomed over their family. Part of her felt an intense need to protect her son from the pain of abandonment, but another part recognized the importance of allowing Eric to form his own understanding of who he was. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the room, Maria's mind raced with the implications of David's health issues. She felt the weight of decisions resting heavily upon her. Should she encourage Eric to meet David? Could they find a way to establish a relationship even amidst such dire circumstances? A few days had passed since Maria and Eric's heart-wrenching conversation, and the atmosphere in their home had shifted from tension to a quiet anticipation. Maria knew that facing David was a monumental step for Eric, but she also believed it was one that would lead to healing. After much contemplation, Eric had agreed to visit his biological father in the hospital. As they drove through the bustling city streets, Maria glanced over at Eric. He sat silently in the passenger seat, his expression a mix of anxiety and resolve. The morning sun cast a warm glow inside the car, but she could see the shadows of uncertainty lingering in his eyes. Are you sure you want to do this? Maria asked, trying to gauge his readiness. Eric took a deep breath, his fingers tapping nervously on his thigh. I have to know, he said finally, his voice steady despite the underlying tension. I want to understand. Maria nodded, her heart swelling with pride. Just remember, you don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with. You can take your time. When they arrived at the hospital, Maria parked the car and they walked inside, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling the air. The hospital was busy with visitors and staff, but all Maria could focus on was the weight of the moment ahead of them. As they approached the elevator, Maria felt a flutter of nerves herself. She had worried about how this meeting would unfold, the emotions it would stir, and the potential for heartbreak. Once they reached David's room, Maria hesitated before knocking on the door. Ready? She asked, glancing at Eric, who looked pale but determined. Yeah, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. She knocked softly, and a muffled voice called out for them to enter. As they stepped inside, Maria's breath caught in her throat. David lay in a hospital bed, his face pale and drawn, surrounded by medical equipment. He looked older than she remembered, a stark reminder of the toll his illness had taken. The sight of him stirred a complex mix of emotions within her, anger, sadness, and a touch of sympathy. David, she said softly, stepping into the room, with Eric close behind her. It's us. He turned his head, and his eyes lit up with recognition, though they were clouded with exhaustion. Maria. Eric, he said, his voice weak but warm. I'm glad you came. Eric shifted uncomfortably, his hands stuffed in his pockets. Hi, he said, barely making eye contact. David's expression softened, but he looked like he was struggling to find the right words. "I know this is a lot for you, Eric. I've waited so long to meet you," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm so sorry for everything." Maria glanced at Eric, who remained silent, absorbing David's words. "We're here because we want to understand," she said, trying to provide some direction to the conversation. "There's a lot to unpack." David nodded, his gaze steady on Eric. "I don't want to burden you with my past mistakes, but I hope to share the truth. I've been thinking about you every day since the moment I found out about you." He paused, swallowing hard. "I never wanted to be away from you, but I wasn't in a position to be the father you deserved." Eric took a deep breath, his shoulders tense. "You have no idea what it was like not knowing anything about you. All I heard were stories and whispers. Why didn't you ever try to reach out?" David's expression fell, and Maria could see the regret etched on his face. "I was scared," he admitted. "I had my own demons to fight. I was young, reckless, and I thought that leaving would be best for you. I didn't want to interfere in your life, especially when I knew I was not well." The silence hung thick in the air, and Eric looked down at his shoes, grappling with the flood of emotions coursing through him. "And now," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "what do you want now?" "I want to be a part of your life," David replied earnestly. "I know I can't change the past, but I'd like the chance to share the future with you, however long that may be. There's so much you need to know, about me, about our family history. It's important that you understand, especially with my health issues." Maria could see the weight of this moment pressing down on Eric. He shifted his gaze back to David, vulnerability creeping into his expression. "What's wrong with you?" David took a deep breath, preparing himself. "I have some serious health conditions. I'm facing complications from a hereditary illness that could affect you too. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to burden you." Eric's eyes widened slightly, and Maria could feel the tension in his body. "What kind of illness?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. David began to explain, detailing the health concerns that he had mentioned in the letter. As he spoke, Maria felt a rush of empathy for both men. This was their first real conversation, yet it was laced with so much pain and honesty. "I didn't want you to have to worry about this," David concluded, his voice filled with regret. "But now that I'm here, I want to make things right. I want to get to know you, to support you in any way I can." After David finished speaking, silence filled the room. Eric's expression shifted as he processed the information, and for a moment, Maria could see the walls around his heart beginning to crack. "I don't know what to say," he finally admitted. "It's just a lot." David nodded, understanding evident in his gaze. "Take your time. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to be here for you, however you need me." Slowly, Eric's shoulders began to relax, and he shifted closer to the bed. "What do you think I should do?" he asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "I think you should do what feels right for you," David replied, sincerity in his tone. "You don't have to rush into anything. This is about building trust, and I'm willing to be patient." Maria watched as Eric's expression softened, the tension in his features easing. "I guess I'd like to get to know you better. Maybe we can start with the basics." David smiled, relief washing over his face. "I'd like that very much." As the conversation continued, Maria felt a sense of hope rising within her. This moment marked a pivotal shift not only for Eric but for their entire family. With each question Eric asked, a bridge was being built between him and David, and Maria found herself quietly thankful for the chance to witness it. Hours later, as they prepared to leave, Maria looked at Eric. He was no longer the guarded boy she had brought into the hospital. He was growing into a young man, ready to embrace the complexities of his past and the potential for a new future. With a newfound sense of understanding between them, Maria and Eric walked to the car, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. Life had thrown them unexpected trials, but together, they had begun to unravel the complexities of family, truth, and the bonds that could transcend even the deepest scars. And as they drove away from the hospital, the weight of the past began to lift, leaving space for hope, healing, and a chance for a new beginning. Thanks for watching. How would you rate this story? Give it 1 to 5 stars in the comments and let me know what you thought. This is a brand new channel, and your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed the story, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss an episode. Your likes, comments, and shares help this community grow, and I'd be so grateful to have you along for the journey. See you next time.